How's it? Dumalang Ashe. Trying to switch it up a little bit for you. Welcome back to the channel. This is the video part one of my experience being a school principal or school leader. Because in some of the stories that I will tell, I will share, I was not technically a principal, but I was the leader of an educational facility. But you'll see that in the next video. First, I apologize for speaking so fast on the last one, but I was hungry. I just left the gym. On this video, I've already been to the gym. I'm relaxed. I've showered. I've had breakfast. So I'm going to be a lot slower. In the last video, I talked about how I was interviewed and hired to work in the school district where I lived, in the county where I lived, as a principal, and how that was very meaningful to me because no one there knew me. They hired me based on my experiences, my resume, and the interviews, which I'm going to start with that aspect. The interview process went as follows. First, there was a panel that I had to interview with, a panel made up of teachers from the building, parents from the community, a member of the Department of Human Resources, and a member of the community that was like a business owner. So that was their standard method of interviewing. They would have that panel ask different questions, and then I could ask questions as well. They would be responsible for selecting from a pool of, let's say, 8 to 12 candidates, and I'll tell you how I know that later. But a pool of like 8 to 12 candidates, and they would recommend about 3 to 5 to interview with the assistant superintendents of the school district. So I had the first round of interviews at 2 different schools. For the one school, I did make it to the second round. So I interviewed with 2 of the assistant superintendents. I think there were like 5 of them. So I set an interview with the one that is over the principals and one that's over the finance department. So if you pass that one, they make one recommendation to the superintendent. And if you interview with the superintendent, you are the candidate. I didn't know all this beforehand, but this is the process. I thought maybe there were a few of us interviewing with the superintendent, but I interviewed with the superintendent. The superintendent makes his recommendation to the Board of Education at the next board meeting, and the board votes to hire the principals. So I was hired in February of that year. I was not to start until the summer. So I spent the rest of the school year at the middle school as an assistant principal, where the principal who kind of resented me, I don't know if I mentioned this on the last video, but I let him know that I, got the position and I would be starting in July when the next new school year started. This man got on the intercom and made an announcement in the middle of the school day that I was being promoted to principal at a school in another school district. The reaction of my staff and my students, they thought that I was leaving right then and there in February. I had to calm them down and tell them, no, I'm finishing out this school year, but I'll be leaving at the end of the school year. So I had several teachers that wanted to come with me. I was going to an elementary school, so they had to have elementary certification. It was interesting spending the rest of the school year there, just knowing that I was leaving. I was actually doing some work for the new school at the time because I learned that the principal that was there was going to move to a brand new school they were opening. They were opening a couple of new schools. The county was growing, and they were opening new schools over the next couple of years. So this is why they had lots of vacancies. So she was going to open a new school, and several of her staff members went with her. So I had lots of vacancies to fill. Sometimes take like maybe a half day from my position as assistant principal, take a half day off and go down there and do interviews. which my principal at the middle school had no problem with because he did not like me and wanted me gone as soon as possible. So he was like, "Yay, if you need to go, go and do what you need to do." Fine, because I don't want to be where I'm not wanted. Towards the end of the school year, I was contacted by the school district, and they said, "Can I start in June?" Because the principal at the current principal needed to go on and open up her building. I mean, it was brand new. They were setting up everything. She had to hire a full staff, and then that would give me an opportunity to spend the summer hiring the rest of my staff. So I did take about, I forgot, 4 or 5 people with me to the new school because they, had the certification. They were qualified to come along with me. So that was exciting. This was a very different community. There were a lot of the same demographics. A lot of people from the old county were moving into the new county, so the demographics were changing. It's a very different community. We had maybe 6 buses, school buses. Most parents dropped their kids off. We didn't have any kids that walked to school because it was on another busy highway. So most parents dropped their students off to school. A lot of them dropped them off at a daycare, and the daycare brought them to school. Um, but the community was very different from the community that I left. Um, I'm not going to talk much about the students because the students were fine. The students were excellent. I mean, I had a few tussles, and compared to where I was coming from, those tussles with students fighting, it was like laughable, and they were little kids too. So it was like, really, this is a fight. But the staff that only worked with elementary kids, they were all up in arms when fights would happen and things like that. I'm like, this is nothing. Come on now. This is simple. The community was very supportive. The parents were very involved, engaged. Um, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But one of the things that I learned as to my hiring, and I can't say if this is factual, but this is just, what I was told over the 6 years that I was in this school. Um, Basically, I was a DEI hire because the demographics of the school were changing. Um, it had always been predominantly white, but the county north was predominantly black, and there were a lot of people that were buying homes and moving into new construction because the north end of the county was growing. The county was growing, period. So a lot of people from the southern end of the one county were moving into the northern end of this county, like me. I mean, I did. I bought a house there. So come to find out that a lot of the parents, it became a majority minority school, and there were some parents that were in the majority race that did not want to be there anymore because they were becoming a minority. So they wanted to move further south where they would be in the majority again. With those changing demographics, parents and staff in general were looking for a leader that reflected their population. Now, I had struggled with the DEI hire part because the assistant principal that was there was a black man. So I'm like, I understand that he said he didn't want it at the time. He didn't want to be a principal at the time. But like, he was a golden child. I mean, I think he's still in the district working like high up. He has a very high position now. But I mean, they loved him in the school district. So I'm sure they could have sweetened the pot if they really wanted him. But I lean on the fact that I had experience and I interviewed well. So we're gonna go with that. There was also a situation where a special education classroom was opened in this school with upon my hiring. They were opening a new special education classroom. Come to find out, to meet the needs of one child that had not really received the services that he should have in his previous school. I guess they felt that moving him to a school where the leadership looked like him and his family would help. And I figured out that's what was going on. Um, and I made sure that we were going to be successful. Okay, this is what you want to do. You want to put this child here and move some other kids there to make a class. You know, I love a challenge, so I'm going to make this class where a lot of people want to bring their kids. Um, so that was my goal. That was my focus. Um, Again, I don't know these things for a fact, but it just this walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, must be a duck. Another challenge that caused a lot of parents that were not in the minority race to leave is the fact that this school was going to become Title One the year that I came there. Um, Title One is government assistance, might not be anymore with new administration coming in, but Title One has been a government assisted program that assists schools that are that have populations that come from underprivileged backgrounds. Now, honestly, this school was not Title One. This school was not Title One. We had parents that were buying at the time $400,000 homes, driving up in Hummers to register their kids, and they asked for a free and reduced lunch for them. I'm like, what? But by law, we had to give them the form, and they filled it out. And because of the number of parents of parents that filled the forms out and were approved for free and reduced lunch, that qualified the school for Title One status. The good thing about Title One, it comes with, and all the schools I worked in previously were Title One, comes with additional staff, additional equipment, additional money to support those students that are considered Title One. At first, it was targeted Title One, but then the whole school became Title One because of the percentage of students that were eligible for those services. So the thing is, a lot of these parents, they did their research and they looked up on the state's website what the definition of Title One, and it says to support poor students. And the parents were offended. They said their children are not poor. They are not poor. They don't want to be in a school that is identified as poor. So a lot of people left with that as well. It's whatever, I'm going to make the best out of it. I'm going to shine. My school is going to shine. So if you need to go, you can go. I saw this firsthand while I was there over the summer. I saw several parents come to withdraw their kids. They were in a different race. Come to withdraw their kids. One man was blatant about it because they have to give a reason why they're withdrawing, or you moving or whatever the situation is. So he said, it's getting too dark up here. I immediately ran over and signed the withdrawal form before anything was filled out. I said, well, let me help you get out before you can't see your way. I was very sarcastic. I still am. But I was very professional with it too, because I'm not going to let you come here and, no, we're not going to talk like that here. So yes, you need to go. Let me help you out. Unfortunately, there were some people that wanted to get out that couldn't get out, but I won't dwell on that. The thing I really enjoyed about this school, I really have nothing negative to say about this school, because there were so many positive things that the adults made it what it was. The staff, the parents, awesome. Chef's kiss. There were a lot of engagement activities. At the beginning of every school year, during pre-planning, we would have a scavenger hunt where staff members would welcome new staff members, and they would basically go around the community trying to find landmarks. Like there was one, well, no, I'm not going to say that because some people will know the school that I'm talking about. But you would go around the community and try to find landmarks in the community. And that's how a lot of staff got to know the community, got to see where the kids were coming from and things like that. One year, I have a picture of me participating in a dunk tank, a fundraiser from a restaurant. asked school leaders to come out, and during a certain period of time, any people would buy tickets to try to dunk the principal or whoever came, and the money proceeds would go to the school as far as a part of a fundraiser. We also had I remember I had an art show, where students, they drew their art. They the art teacher was wonderful. She had the students draw, specific art, this is specific themed art. We partnered with a company that would frame the art, and they came out with these art stands, and we had like an art show. It was like a art show. We didn't have wine and cheese; we had juice and cheese, but it was very. I mean, it was awesome, and the parents can come in and buy their child's art, order different art. We had it right before Christmas, so that we promoted it as excellent Christmas presents that you could send to family members that were not around, that were not in the area. So that was a huge success. Field days, Olympics, those were excellent as well. We had lots of science activities. Um, there was one, I think, something dealing with a rocket lifting off. Um, so we had that in the back of the school. Um, Lots of fundraising, and parents participated in the fundraisers. We did a personalized brick fundraiser where you could buy a brick and have whatever you wanted put on it. Like I think I put my parents' names on one. I put my name on one, and they basically, they bricks came back and they would install the bricks around. Where did they put them? I think they was around the marquee of the school. So that was a big thing. I can go back today and still see my bricks and all. Um, we had an expansion of the building because the area was growing, the school was growing, and so for a period of time we had trailers on the side of the building as we were extending the building, the hallways, to add additional classes. Um, there was one fundraiser I did where I told the students that I would spend the night on the roof if they raised a certain amount of money. Uh, the students wanted me to dress in drag if they raised a certain amount of money. They didn't raise the money on either one of those, but yeah, it was the concept and the idea was a lot of fun. Some funny things that happened. There was no teacher union in the state, but there was an organization that tried to function as a teacher union. I had to reprimand one of my teachers. Um, she did two things that were not in her authority to do. I won't share that because then people will know who I'm talking about. But when I wrote her up, I told her I was going to put both of the incidents in one letter. I'm not trying to like sabotage anyone or anything like that. But I said I'm going to put both incidents in one letter and just document them. We talked about this. This is something that that you weren't supposed to do, and I need to address it and document that I addressed it because it involved a child, and the child's parent knew. So I had to show my superiors that I dealt with it. So this staff member went to that organization to complain, and they sent a 6-page letter to the superintendent saying that I needed to be retrained, and all kind of just allegations and things like that against me. I didn't know anything about this organization. Um, Side note, the year that I left, they actually my old school, they actually contacted the same organization about the principal at the old school, and they picketed him. They came out, in front of the school with signs picketing the school on him. I was like, ooh, wow. But anyway, so they came back, and the letter was sent to me, and it was sent to the superintendent. So I was in panic mode. I'm like, oh God, I'm about to lose my job. I just got here. I'm about to be a failure as a principal. I called to the district office. I said, please, I need to speak to the superintendent. Please, this is desperate. This is urgent. Emergency situation. I called. I spoke to him. He laughed. He said, "You're a real administrator now." He said, "They have no power, they have no authority." I read the letter. You have absolutely nothing to worry about. Save it for your memoirs. And I actually still do have the letter. Um, Years later, that same staff member reached out to me for a letter of recommendation. Go figure. Another situation that happened, we were right next door to the middle school that we fed into. So all of our students, when they left fifth grade, they would go to the middle school, which was basically behind our school. It was we were on like a corner, so they faced one street and we faced another street. So um, I think it was the second principal of that school while I was there, because the first principal was promoted. The second principal that came along, she had a child that would was going to be enrolled in my school, um, and so she was very involved. She was very involved with the child's education. We had open house one year, and she came by and she wanted to speak to me. She was just talking to me in general because their open house was later that day. They had different times for open houses. So she wanted to speak to me in general about, her child and, expectations and little things I need to know about him because he had some special needs. And as she was talking, we were talking like in the middle of a common area. So people were buzzing around, speaking, all this type of stuff. But I had mastered the skill of physically being there, but mentally being somewhere else. So I was staring her dead in her eyes, just like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I heard her say, and she was talking and this and that and this, and you have checked out. She said, you are really good at you are looking into my soul and not hearing a word I'm saying. I'm like, what? What do you mean? And it was funny. She said, I do the same thing. She said, child, I do the same thing. She said, we could talk some other time because I know you're busy. So I appreciated that from another colleague. But that was so funny when she said in the middle of her sentence, you have checked out of this conversation. I really was never there. I mean, this is not the time and place to have a parent conference in the middle of a common area. And you know that. This school district offered a lot of opportunities for growth. People were being promoted left and right around me. Did not want to. I didn't want to be not around. I did not want to not be around children. So a lot of people were finding positions at the district level. I didn't want to be disconnected from the school. I never wanted to be anything higher than a principal. So but I admired the opportunity. And people asked me about was I going to apply for certain openings. I said no, I don't want to. I don't want to leave my building. My assistant principal was promoted. There were some other teachers that were promoted to assistant principal. So there was lots of opportunity for growth in this school district. So I really appreciated that. This is also an opportunity. I received my doctorate while I was there. I bought my dog, Zane, while I was there, my Great Dane. So lots of, personal things, personal accomplishments happened while I was there. This is another situation where I live down the street from the school. The subdivision where I bought my house was fed into a school which was basically within walking distance. The kids in my subdivision, which was very, 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 very small. My subdivision had 22 houses, and that was it. No room for a phase two or anything like that. So I loved that. It was one street. So the kids that were in my subdivision could walk to the school, to their elementary school. It was, there was plenty of sidewalks, but a lot of the parents carried them to school. Lo and behold, one of the parents in my subdivision found out that I was a principal, and she withdrew her child and brought her child to my school. So we had to have a serious heart-to-heart conversation. I was like, the Jay that you know here is going to be different from the Jay at the school. So I don't want to talk about anything in the neighborhood at the school, and I don't want to talk about anything at the school in the neighborhood. What I do at my house It's my personal business, and that should not come to the school. Now, if you can't handle that, please don't bring your child down there. Please don't. So she was very respectful. I mean, her son was very young, like second grade, first grade, or something like that. And when he first got there, he was bragging that I was his neighbor. I was like, no, you cannot say that. You can't. Don't tell people that. On the flip side, this is also when I learned that I had celiac disease. Um, I think it was like 2009. I received the official diagnosis like October of 2009. But that year, I noticed that I would eat, and before I could finish a meal, let me see, I could say this without being graphic, and there's no way. Before I could finish a meal, I was in the bathroom with what I was eating coming back out of me on both ends at the same time. I dropped a lot of weight. In fact, I have a picture that I'll insert. Uh, we were taking school pictures that year, and we scheduled the pictures early that morning. So I took my picture, and as soon as I took my picture, I ran to the bathroom in my office and just. And even in this picture, I looked kind of skeletal. So my staff was worried about me. My family was worried about me because, like I said, I lost a lot of weight, and it was even in my face, skeletal. I mean, there was one thing that I thought was going on, but my doctor said it wasn't that. So I had to, it was dealing with food. This was when I found out that I had a gluten allergy. I had to have a special test to find that out, that I'm allergic to wheat, barley, rye, and oats. Now, wheat is in everything, so I had to make some major changes in my life. But my staff was very supportive, especially those times that I had to leave because I would get sick. I would have to leave and go home. And instead of calling the district, because I lived right down the street, they said, just go home, lay down. If we need you, we'll call you. But go and like get yourself together, because I was like, it was uncontrollable. Like I messed up a couple of suits from just, yeah, on this end, not that end, on this end. But so there's a lot of adventurous. There were a lot of adventurous situations that happened. Now, like I said, there wasn't a lot of student incidents that happened. The most challenging thing that I had to do is when I lost a staff member. And I had to announce to the staff and the students that she had passed away because it was sudden. She was there at work one day. She had an injury from something else, and there was a blood clot that traveled from the injury to, I don't know if it was her lungs or her heart or whatever, but she passed like that when she got home. She asked to leave early. She never asked to leave early, and she was never late. But so I knew that she was in pain. So she went home. She lived by herself. The next day, she was not there. We tried calling. My assistant and some other staff members knew where she lived, and they went to her house, and that's where they found her, like just sitting on her bed. It was obvious that it happened so suddenly, and I had to make the announcement to the students, the staff, and the community. She was not a classroom teacher. She was a specialist, like a coach. But still, everybody knew her. So that was the hardest thing of my 6 years there, to have to make that announcement. But the only reason that I left is because I got greedy. I'm going to be honest. I got greedy. The last 3 years that I was there, we had a salary freeze. And I was not too happy with the salary freeze because, I expected every year that I've worked so far, we get we would get an increase in salary. Um, that along with the fact that my social life was on zero. I needed a change. I needed a change of scenery. I needed a change of, you know, people. I'd always loved DC and I really wanted to go to DC. So I started applying for my certification in Maryland and was going to move to Maryland because, I needed more money. I wanted more money. And I just wanted a change of scenery. I was very comfortable in the school. There was no issues. It was just me. I needed a change. I needed something different. And I have an aunt that was a principal in Chicago, and she told me I should look into Chicago because they were going to be hiring. So I applied in Chicago as well because Maryland was dragging their feet with the certification thing, and Chicago made more sense because I have lots of family in Chicago. My mom's side of the family, had lots of aunts and uncles, their cousins in Chicago. No family in DC at the time. Well, I think I had a cousin in Maryland, but um, so I applied, and I'll tell the story about how I was hired. Then I'll tell the story about my experience in the next video. But I applied. They have a pre-interview process where you spend a day in the life of a principal, and you go. I had to, travel to Chicago, and I spent the day, like 6 hours, just being exposed to different scenarios, and they would say, "What would you do?" That type of thing. So apparently, I did very well because I received a call for an interview. Their interview process is different. Where the last school that I was talking about, you had to go through those layers of interviews. Their local school council, which is made up the same population, teachers, parents, it's predominantly parents, teachers, and community members like business owners. They did the interviewing. They looked at the resumes. They were guided by the local network of the administrative network, but they did the interviewing, and they hired, and they could only interview people that passed that initial interview stage with the district. So once I did that, they really wanted me up there in Chicago. They flew me up there. I had a friend, so I stayed with a friend of mine because they were going to give me accommodations. Um, and they had someone to take me around. I actually went and interviewed in person because I did a phone interview with one school, and they knew that I was coming up. They said, "Well, we'll do a follow up interview with you in person." So I did the follow up interview. No, I'm sorry, just the opposite. They found out that I was there, and the administrator set up an interview for me while I was there. So they pulled their counsel together real quick, and we had like an informal interview. We still did the phone interview when I got back on the date that I was supposed to do that interview. I also went around and met some other people, some other school districts, some other schools. But it was apparent that they really wanted me to come up there because a lot of times I heard people say, they don't do this for everybody. You must have really made an impression because they don't do this. So the school where I had the interview, the local school council recommended me for hire. The contract is with the school council, and it's a 4-year contract, where previous contracts that I had were like a year. So this was a 4-year contract. And in the next video, I'll talk about my experience as a principal in Chicago for 4 years. I love the experience that I had. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, I wonder what could have happened with my life if I stayed where I was in my first principalship, because there were no problems, there were no issues. I really didn't want to be promoted to the district level, and I saw other people going down there, doing different things. I liked working with kids. I liked interacting with parents, especially in my school, because it was a family. It was truly a family. I would see them in the grocery store because we all shopped at the same grocery store, pharmacy, fast food places in the area, and it was real chill. I really had no reason to leave other than the fact that I was greedy and I wanted more money, and my social life was on zero. So um, I often wonder what would have happened if I had stayed, but I'm glad I did go because, as you'll see in the next video, they took me to school. I learned so much, and I'm so glad that I did have that experience. So until then, thank you for watching again. Um, Please like, comment, and share. And until the next time, Nyabonga.